This is Martha Ambrose. I am the director of Cal-ISBOA for those of you who have not met me. Today, in conjunction with CISBIT, the California Independent School Benefits Trust, which is an initiative of Cal-ISBOA's, we're pleased to offer this webinar. One of the trust's reasons for being is to help our schools manage their employee benefits, and whether or not you're a member of the trust, we want to make sure that you have the best information you can have in order to do that. And we're very fortunate to be the broker of the trust is Bolton, and they have a long experience with independent schools in California. And today's presenter is Nicholle Trugman, and she is actually our point person for the trust and works with our schools in the trust, and on a broader basis works with the education practice group within Bolton and with independent schools throughout California. She has deep knowledge of the independent school market. She's very dedicated to it, and she really enjoys assisting schools with developing financial strategies and service models that support each school's culture and long-term goals. So it's my pleasure to introduce Nicholle. She's the Associate Vice President of the Bolton Education Practice Group. So Nicholle, I'm turning it over to you.
Wonderful. Thank you, Martha. And I want to thank everybody for taking their time today. I know we're all juggling multiple hats, so we'll go ahead and get this started. Today our presentation is preparing you for your next benefits renewal. So we want to make sure you have a roadmap to a successful renewal regardless of carrier, advisory, partner. There's always those common themes and common objectives that everyone wants to meet. So when we create that strategic path, we're really looking at a multitude of things. We want to review our current demographics. We like to look at industry and regional benchmarking, reviewing current plan offerings, previous plan offerings, reviewing trend increases, whether it's by carrier, whether it's by benefits overall, or regionally. Determining a budget is huge. We want to have those conversations and know really what we're targeting for. And then, of course, setting those open enrollment meetings, expectations, communications. So I am showing a couple of renewal timelines. I'm going to show you a small group timeline and a large group timeline. These are great templates to use or even to have. Strategic planning really starts about 6 months prior to your renewal. Doesn't matter if you're in a small group segment or a large group segment, but you want to set those meetings early. And then what we love about the calendars from an advisory standpoint is we all know what we're responsible for. And then what's great is as the calendars are developed, you'll see on it strategic planning meeting when we're requesting the renewals from the carrier and whose responsibility that is. Renewal expected from carriers. So on these timelines, they're really fluid. You go through it, you see what needs to be done. Some schools have technology, some schools don't. Some advisory partners help with the TPA setup, some don't. So depending on what is unique to your school, you get that listed in the calendar, you put dates and responsibilities. If some of these dates, when it's originally made, you realize you have graduation, maybe spring break is coming up, then that's when you start to shift the dates so that you know where you're going and where you're going to meet those marks. A lot of times we'll just pull up the school calendar and look at it and then send it over for review and advisement. So we're all on target. And then if something comes in earlier or later, the dates can be adjusted. But the ultimate goal is to hit the renewal effective date in a timely manner, and then of course have enough time for open enrollment. This is a small group one, and then there's also large group. The difference really between the two is when the renewal is released. And I know Martha posted this presentation, so feel free to take a look at it, see maybe how it applies to your school. So as mentioned, strategic planning really starts about 6 months prior to your renewal. Some of the things you want to look at that we have found helpful is we call it the State of the Union. When we look at this, we want to know what are the school's goals and objectives. Are there any changes? That's headcount, program, operational changes. Do you have construction going on? Are you adding, let's say, maybe a preschool or a kindergarten that you may not have had? Maybe you're merging 6th, 7th, and 8th. Whatever that is, it helps your advisor to understand what's going to be going on and then how to prepare for your renewal. Expansions or reductions. Historical renewal data. It is always great to have a recap of your previous 3 to sometimes 5 years, depending on how long you've had that relationship or you've pulled that information. We love looking at renewal historical data because it gives us the renewal averages. It really assists in forecasting. We can kind of journey back with what plan changes were made, were there contribution changes made, so that we know sometimes, you know, people don't like change. And if maybe plan changes were made the previous year, that gives us a heads up of saying, hey, we don't want to do that 2 years in a row. So it helps us to forecast that as well. And then your carrier and benefit plan changes. It also helps us too, on small group, plans are refiled with the state every year. So we'll already know if the current plans are going to have those minor changes in it, usually in January. Then you want to look at your demographics and benchmarking. What is your current demographics? What is your average age? Where's most of your population enrolled? What is the average age per enrollment? Statistically, we usually see a younger demographic on the HMO offering versus a PPO or HSA offering. Benchmarking data. This is the #1 question we get. What are other schools doing? What are other schools doing in California? What are they doing in our region? And then also regional comparisons. So it'll let you know if your benefits are in line, if that is your objective or maybe not your objective. And then trends in the marketplace. We're exploring current trends. We have a next generation of workers coming into the workforce. What does that look like? Does that affect your school? Paying for higher education. I can tell you that is one of the larger requests we're getting is tuition reimbursement or student loan repayment. How do we find the dollars within our budget to offer different or more benefits of value? And then, of course, a greater focus on financial wellness. So we've seen some schools bring in different advisors as far as financial wellness, offer different classes, even if it has to do with your retirement. So that has also been a bigger push that we're seeing, may not be in your specific school, but definitely something we want to look at as far as trends. And then current benefit and program evaluation. Staff and faculty feedback. What have we, as your advisor, heard? Are there any ongoing claims issues? Have there been benefit requests? For example, let's say you have a dental plan, but it doesn't currently have orthodontia on it. Is that something that's been requested? Some schools like to do a survey to find out. We want to make sure that the surveys are intentional, because anytime you send out a survey, the point of staff and faculty giving feedback is that you're listening to them and you're possibly going to make those changes. So we always want to make sure we're wording those in a way that are maybe more fact-finding or seeking to understand the benefits being used, not being used, and possible requests throughout the year. For your larger schools, let's say schools over 100, some of them want to look at risk assessments. There's several options out there that you want to start to talk about now if it's a fit. You know, you can stay in a fully insured platform, can look at a minimum premium plan. You know, that's where the health insurance plan is partly self-insured by the employer, but it's fully administered by the carrier. So you need claims data to do that. You make a set premium, but you have a minimum premium, then you pay on the claims to a certain amount. And then there's the level funding, where that takes into risk as well. It is also a mild form of self-insuring, and then you could get a refund if you've overpaid. But again, nothing that's going to put you at risk if the claims are higher. And then option 4 is a full self-funding approach. Again, we always recommend this on larger schools. just to offset the premium and risk. But these are the conversations you want to start looking at and having an understanding a little bit clearer, especially this is a big question that we start to hear from a lot of the boards because they love to read a lot. They're looking at different alternatives. They're also trying to help contain costs. So it's great if we discuss this at the very beginning, and then it's better to help educate the board as well as if this is really a viable solution. And then contributions. Love to talk about the current contributions, what that total spend is, and then what we're looking forward for the next plan and benefit year. The next topic is trend increases. Carriers provide their trend increases, so it's great to keep track of that. So this is a sample that we use for our smaller schools. Those are schools under 100. You can always get the current upcoming quarter, you can get the current quarter, we can get the upcoming quarter, and then we also look back that 3 to 5 years to give us more of a trend, but this will let you know this is where the carriers have been trending as far as increases. So it's always nice to have that discussion. Sometimes it's if a school just wants to stay with their same carrier and they've been there for a while, it's still great to know from a trend perspective where you're going to land for budgetary purposes. Budgeting. Setting a budget is so necessary. It allows your advisory partner to find those either alternative plans, maybe a different contribution model, but we want to align with the school spending. And I'm not going to lie, we do hear it quite often that they would like 0%. We would love 0% for all of our schools as well. But there is a reason why we like to show those trend increases so that we can help to fall in line. You know, one of the things when you're strategically planning is we don't want to wait for your renewal to be released to start to have those conversations. Once your renewal is released, it's a great time for your partner to go back and say, okay, we have clear direction of what we're doing, and you can work through the renewal much quicker and more efficient so that when your advisor is coming back out and sitting down with you saying, okay, here's the renewal, here's some alternative, here's some recommendations, it is really clear and directed. It's exactly what you asked for. And then, of course, open enrollment. Schools have different types of open enrollment. So you want to determine meeting dates. Are you going to have meetings? Employee communications, memos, benefit brochures. Does your benefit brochure currently include all your benefits, retirement, if you have a student loan repayment? It's a great time to say, hey, you know what, we realized we weren't including these aspects. Some of the schools like to also include vacation and sick time and really just make it an all-encompassing document for staff and faculty. Open enrollment can be done several ways. Sometimes there's in-person meetings. Sometimes it's done all through email. Sometimes they're done via webinars. Sometimes it's one-on-one meetings. But this is a great time to start to plan what meetings do you want for your staff and faculty and what is the best fit, and then getting in front of it to start those communications and what we're going to be delivering for the next benefit year. All right. Well, we just don't want to move, do we? Uh-oh. Let's see why we're having some challenges. There we go. Clearly the presentation was telling me to move it along. Okay, so small group renewals. What you may not know. And for large group, just to preface this, large group renewals are usually released 90 days before your renewal period. Some carriers will do it 120. In looking at our timeline, your advisors really need to be pushing probably like 4 or 5 months out to get that exact date of when the renewals are going to be released. So on a large group perspective, you get them at a pretty decent amount of time. For small group, as many of you know, the carriers traditionally release small group renewals 60 days prior to your renewal date. However, what most people don't know is the small group quoting engines actually receive the quarterly rates 60 to 90 days from the start of each quarter. So even though you may not have your physical renewal 60 days, those rates have already been loaded into the small group quoting engines. And the rates are consistent or they're the same throughout the entire quarter. So with most carriers, the rates change quarterly. For Kaiser, the rates adjust twice a year. January through June, you can already run those rates, and then July through December. So this information actually provides your broker partner the ability to pull your school rates prior to the renewal release date. So a good example of this is, let's say you have a December 1st renewal, which a lot of small schools do. Your renewal can actually be quoted in August because the October, November, and December rates are loaded into the quoting engines in August. That's your 60 to 90-day mark. This is when your advisory partner will refer back to January 1st of any given year. So the rates can be run. You get into the tool and you look at it and you say, okay, we're probably trending. It looks like they're going to have a 2, 3, maybe 8% increase. You can also check back at the beginning of the year to see if there were any plan changes on the current plans, because every year in small group, those plans are re-rated and refiled with the state of California. So the plan changes we usually see are sometimes small deductible. The out-of-pocket maximum is a big one that seems to creep every year, little by little, in the small group segment. And then any pharmacy changes. It'll show us all of those mapped changes as well as any new plans that may be on the market. So again, even though your renewal is released 60 days prior, can definitely get some insight before that of what the increase is going to be, and then start pulling rates for possible other plans or carriers. Carrier requirements. Standard participation guidelines are published each year, and then there's relaxed participation promos are announced quarter by quarter. So most carriers, for example, want a 50% participation when along the side of another carrier. However, some carriers with a relaxed participation requirement have during varying times throughout the year. So a good example is UHC relaxed their requirement to a minimum of 5 enrollees when along the side of another carrier last December. So once in a while, and we start to see this push towards the end of the year where carriers are trying to get a little bit more market share, is they will relax their participation in hopes to get in somewhere, get their foot in the door. So what's great to know is you can always pull the participation requirements if you're looking to change carriers. And then also as you go into the next quarter and you want to possibly offer a dual option, you can then see, is anybody running their participation promos? So that's always a great conversation to have if you're interested in wanting to bring alongside in another carrier. Kaiser is usually the one where, let's say you're all Kaiser, but you do have some of that staff and faculty that really need, let's say, a PPO somewhere else or need to use a specific specialist. This is when those promos become into good use. And then provider disruption reports. One of the questions you always want to remind your advisor of is if they're making a plan change or a recommendation to go to a new carrier, what does that provider change look like? So you can cross-reference networks as well as providers. That is on the HMO. Unfortunately, because you don't pick a primary care physician on a PPO, that's not captured. But on your HMO plans, the current carrier can let us know which medical groups and which providers have been elected, and then that can be ran within another system. Let's say we have a group with Aetna, and the renewal's just not in a good spot. However, we're looking at, let's say, Blue Shield. Their rates are just doing really well. They're really strong. before even presenting that to any school, we want to know, is there any disruption in providers? Because nobody likes to change their doctors. We understand that. So you want to run those reports. So it allows us to get a match. So as we come out and let's say alternatives need to be shown, that's when you sit there and say, okay, so we've looked at the networks. This may be a good option. It works within your budget. And on top of that, and checking all the providers, all of them are in this, let's say, Blue Shield network except for 2 or 3, or maybe all of them are a match. But that's the information that you really want to know, even on a large group perspective as well. PPOs are great because most PPO networks are pretty consistent with in-network providers, but it's the HMO that you really want to make sure that are falling in there in the same medical groups and in the same hospital alignments. So those are the things that you'll see usually on any type of presentation for your renewal, is what does that percentage look like for your provider? So you know at that time if it's a good fit, especially in small group. If you don't know and then you have to go back, that always delays that a little bit longer. So as you navigate through your renewal, and a lot of our schools I know are starting to renew in the summer, and then they go, we start to see it in September, October, and then December. This is a great time to sit down. I know we're getting to the end of the year and graduations, but please feel free to use these calendars. Start to outline what that's going to look like. What are your goals and objectives? Start thinking about your budget, your contributions. Was there different plan offerings that staff and faculty have been looking for? This really makes your renewal a lot easier and seamless, and that way all of your objectives are being met, your budget is being met. It doesn't feel as rushed, and you're able to deliver, the benefit offering that your school wants, and it fits its needs and culture. So Martha, again, has posted the presentation on the site for you. If you have any questions or if there's anything that I can guide you in or clarify, please feel free to reach out to me. I'm always available. And I thank you today for taking your time. So we know it's valuable. We know you're super busy. So thank you.
Does anyone have any questions for Nicholle that while we're on the call, or the webinar, I should say? And I think the whole point of having this is to start thinking about it earlier so that you can be more strategic. And one of the common things that we've been hearing a lot at Cal-ISBOA is that schools are really looking at the best way of spending the money that they have allotted for benefits, whether that's for health insurance or for, as Nicholle mentioned, for tuition loan help, and with the changing demographics of some of our faculty and staff, there's a lot of questions out there as far as what's going on. So the more you can think ahead, you can be more strategic and manage your money most effectively. But it is hard in the life of a school to make changes, and so hopefully this will be helpful. We have recorded this, so we will also be posting the recording on the Access Member Benefits section, and the presentation is already up there. So, and you have Nicolle's information if you'd like to ask her a question offline. So thank you. There are no questions. Thank you, Nicholle.
Thank you.